Erin.
All right, we're going to take a little look at how God's grace can lead you from trial to triumph. All right, have you noticed that life is full of surprises? Some surprises are good, and you're fine just one moment, and then the next screen too, wham. Well, I imagine that my life was going to be just one wide, smooth path. Well, that's really not the way life goes. So, out of the blue, some crazy turn of events can take you or someone you know by surprise. It could be a sudden loss of a loved one, a serious illness, financial stress, job loss. You know, those giant jolts that come out of nowhere and they leave you thinking, hey, that was not in the travel brochure of the happily ever after life that I envisioned for myself. Well, St. Peter talks about this very topic in the Bible, that we should not be surprised when some fiery ordeal comes upon us. I will tell you a story about how God can give a person grace, strength, and a little humor to help lead you from your trials to triumph. It started with a life-changing shock that rocked my world a few years ago. And I call it my story a dramedy. Okay, I made up that word. So it's part drama, part comedy. And it had to do with the trial of in the form of cancer for me. But you can apply the information that I'm about to share with you to any trial that you might be facing. I found 3 strategies that helped me to plug into God's grace during a trial. And those are faith, fun, family, and I had to add friends. You got to have friends. So my jolting journey began with a mammogram. And when the test results came back as abnormal, well, it just had to be a mistake. I refused to believe it. I went straight to denial. My motto could have been, call me Cleopatra, I'm the queen of denial. I was in denial because I'm a healthy person and I eat organic vegetables. There's no family history of cancer. I work out. People like me don't get cancer. Well, that was wrong. Not only did I have breast cancer, it was stage 3 and a very aggressive kind that had already invaded my lymph nodes and was headed towards my vital organs. My oncologist said that even with treatment, there was an 85% chance I might not be alive in another year. So, wow, that banana peel, that's kind of just how I felt. That news just knocked me right off balance completely. My whole world was turned upside down in an instant. However, I learned that even when things look like no positive outcome could happen, God can surprise you in ways so wonderful you just can't even imagine. When you get bad news of this magnitude, I thought, let's employ the first of our 3 strategies, which is faith. Faith is believing, it's believing and trusting in something for which there's no proof. And in Mark, the Bible, in Mark chapter 5, it tells us that your faith has saved you. That would be on the next screen. So, and facing suffering or illness it's just tough, and people respond in different ways. One of my doctors showed me a helpful study that is on the next screen that is about the 4 responses that a patient receiving a cancer diagnosis can do. But these tips also can extend to whatever trial that you have as well. See if you can find yourself in any of these. The first one is denial. That was the one that I grabbed onto first. I don't know why. And then in the next screen, we'll have the next three possible responses that are just common when someone is delivered very bad news. A fighting spirit, where a person has an optimistic attitude and a great determination to survive. Or the third one, they could have a stoic acceptance, where they ignore the illness and they just carry on as though nothing is happening. And the last is hopelessness, where patients believe that their outcome will be negative no matter what. Well, none of these reactions is right or wrong. Faith and God's grace can help you meet the stresses of the day and get through your trials. During the time that I was facing all of this bad news, I looked to the wisdom of the saints to see, well, how did they deal with their trials? And I found a book by Saint Jose Maria Escriva. His book is called The Way. I recommend it. This quote here seemed to be relevant to what I was going through, and perhaps for you, if you're looking into facing some sort of trial that might be happening in your life. Well, the next, let's see, is we have the second strategy, which I call fun, or trying to find the humor. Well, what are you thinking? How can you even think of fun at a time like this? That's just crazy. Yeah, it does sound crazy, but you know what? This strategy is actually supported in the Bible. In the book of Proverbs, it says, have a cheerful heart. It's good medicine. Sometimes if a trauma is just too much bad news to take in, try going to the other end of the spectrum to find the opposite of bad news, which is trying to put a positive spin on it. I found that humor could help diffuse the pain like a pressure relief valve. The next screen here is that in my family, I must warn you, in tragic times, we crack jokes. We have sort of an unspoken family motto: when the going gets tough, the tough gets silly. We don't do it disrespectfully, but more as an emotional defense mechanism to help us cope with very bad, tragic news. Here's an example. When my father was in the hospital for a quadruple bypass heart surgery, all of us, his 5 children, were gathered somberly at his bedside. A nurse with a clipboard came in to ask my dad if he was an organ donor. And through his oxygen mask, in a raspy voice, he said, "No, but I have a piano that you might want." His humor helped lighten the whole mood. And by the way, he made a full recovery and he lived many more years. Then after another sad time of a funeral, one of our beloved our Aunt Lois, after the funeral, my brother Joe saw everyone's sadness. So he told us a joke. It's like about a brick wall. I'll tell it to you. Do you want to hear it? All right. So there was a man who worked at a hospital for emotionally disturbed children. He was walking into work one day and he had to pass that high brick wall that was all around the hospital. And he heard the kids behind the wall chanting, 13, 13, 13. And he said, "What's going on in there?" So we found this little hole in the brick wall and he put his eye up real close to see in. And somebody poked him in the eye with a stick. And then he heard the kids say, 14, 14, 14. So these are my people. Welcome to my world. But can you see how laughing can help us feel better? On the next, in the Bible again, full of wisdom, in the book of Sirach, it says, gladness of the heart is the very life of a man. And again, we've got this cheerfulness. It will help prolong your days. So I just believe that trying to be cheerful in the face of bad times can help. I decided with my cancer to be like my dad and find the humor in the things that were happening along the way. Studies show that humor can lift your spirits during times of stress, and laughing can boost your immune system. It's not to say that laughing or that illness is fun or funny. Of course, it's not. But humor can help you get through way better than if you had a negative outlook. So with breast cancer, one of my cousins found this funny T-shirt, and I just said, that is hilarious. Yes, they're fake. My real ones tried to kill me. And I wore this T-shirt to my chemo sessions, and the nurses laughed. My fellow patients with breast cancer laughed. Even people with kidney failure and lung cancer, they were all laughing. And I have to tell you, that made the chemo room a little less gloomy. Laughing helps take some of the sting out of your scary situation. Well, my radiation treatment for the first time, I didn't know what they were going to do to me, and I was scared out of my wits. The nurse led me down this long hallway to this dark, cold room. To me, it felt like a cave. Well, because I was so scared, this made me see everything through a lens of fear. So to me, the treatment room that was dark and cold like a cave, it felt more like a crime scene, like some scary place where a serial killer might hide a body on the TV show CSI. Well, my husband was with me. He's my best support, and he's funny. His humor helped me when the nurse, who I'd have to say was a little bit cranky that day, she kind of yelled at me like a Marine drill sergeant, and she said, "Lie still. Close your eyes and don't move. It'll be over in a few minutes." And my husband said, "Hey, that sounds kind of like my wedding night." So once again, laughing can help lighten the whole mood. And even those cranky pants laughed. It broke the tension, and it made things way more bearable. And here we go with the Bible again. That was my great book of inspiration. Worrying will not add 1 cubit to your life. And in life, we all have trials and sufferings. But when suffering and sickness comes knocking at our door, I don't know about you, but I want to push it away and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you must have the wrong person. You need to keep going to some other person's life, not mine. There must be some mistake." So in my mind, suffering was something that happened to that portion of the population called other people, not me. Well, there was no mistake in this case. The suffering was for me. And I again checked in with the wisdom of the saints. As Saint Teresa said, that God will give us the grace to get through the trial and the suffering. And also I have Saint Ambrose on the next slide. He had some very good advice that I learned from, that suffering is the training ground for strong souls. In the midst of my suffering, I prayed in my room and I said to God, "I don't know why this is happening to me, but I'm going to trust in you, and I'm just going to accept." And like our song today said, just surrender and accept the suffering. And I also asked God to please help me. And he did. And he'll help you as well, I promise. I also heard an inspiring quote here, that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And as spiritual beings, we need to pray every day for God's grace to lift us up out of those dark places, because we cannot do it alone. The one way I found to lift us out of dark places is the rosary. The 50 Hail Marys are like a 50 caliber weapon against evil. Each tiny bead of prayer is like a cannonball against darkness and pain, and I promise it will only make things better. Here's my rosary story. When I first got cancer and I was home from my cancer surgery, I was in so much pain. I could barely move. I couldn't even make it up the stairs to get into my bed. And so my husband helped me just get on the couch. I just curled into the fetal position and I felt so low, like every good thing had been drained from me. Have you ever felt like that bad? That was really the lowest point for me. I had a rosary, but at that time in my life, I didn't know how to pray a rosary. I knew that it was holy and that it had to do with the Blessed Mother. So I held it in my hand and I just cried. I said, Mary, please help me. I was as helpless as a little child. We have to pray with the confidence of a child because, again, we cannot do this on our own. I promised Mary that when I got better, I would learn to pray a rosary, and I did. And I now pray it every day. That day here that I'm telling you about, that heartfelt prayer was a real turning point in my journey with cancer. Our moments of our greatest pain can bring about our greatest spiritual growth. That's a hard lesson. And I mean, none of us wants pain, but I don't know, the growth in our spirit just can be a real reward, but it's going to be a hard one. Well, on the new topic, the strategy that can also help you in trials is your family. And P.S., this is not my real family. But sometimes sometimes family can be the source of our trials, right? Hey, I'm not here to judge. But some problems can just slam into us like a tsunami and just toss us around like a toy boat in a turbulent ocean. It can leave us wanting to pull the covers over our head and isolate. And at first, it feels safe to be all hidden away, but you don't want to get stuck there in what I call victim mode. Reaching out to others helps a lot. Sometimes you have to make yourself do this. And if you're not ready for people to help you, then the next slide, sometimes pets can be an emotional support and they can actually help reduce our stress levels. This is the same kind of dog that my Aunt Lois had before she died. And he helped her, calm down. And she really did. She got so upset with him one day when he peed on her beautiful Persian rug that she got from Europe. And she's like, I am just going to get that dog. I'm going to twist him like a wash rag and stuff him down the toilet. And my cousin Craig was there. He's like, you can't do that. And she says, well, I can if you help me. So having help from others can help lessen your stress, even if they pee on your rug. So with cancer or any serious illness, meeting in a support group joins you with other people sharing a similar situation. Their studies show that people in support groups live twice as long as those who have no emotional support. These are my friends and family who they literally shaved their heads to just share in solidarity with me. I just think that's pretty amazing that anyone would do that. And friends, they're just going to be there to help you get through the trials. They make everything better. Well, also, the friends that we meet in prayer groups, I think, can be a great support. The prayer group at my church had a Life in the Spirit seminar in 2009 that also changed my life. If you ever hear of a Life in the Spirit seminar being offered, I recommend go. It can change your life too. All right, here is one thing that happened to me in my Life in the Spirit seminar. During the baptism in the Spirit part, each person in our group of 50 sat holding a lighted candle in a dimly lit, quiet room. As I sat, my eyes were closed, and a random vision, very much like this, came to my mind. I saw Jesus right next to me. He was very tall, and he had his arms around me, and I, in my vision, was a little child version of myself. Well, right about that time, a group leader there was waving to me, come with me. And then she led me to a different room with two women to pray over me. And they prayed in the tongues. I never saw this before. And one of the women stopped to say, I feel moved to tell you that I see Jesus right next to you. He's very tall and he has his arms around you, and you are a little child version of yourself. I was dumbfounded. She described the very vision in my mind that I had told to no one. And then I shared that with her, and she said, that's the Holy Spirit moving through us. Wow. Talk about the power of prayer. Jesus said, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I will be in their midst. Well, if I had stayed home with my head under the covers, look what I would have missed. So my recommendation is to find a tribe of believers and grow your faith. It will add an element of fun to spend time in fellowship, just like we're doing today, gathered in a loving prayer community. Well, we've covered some ways to bring God's grace to help you through trials and sufferings. And I'd like to, if you want to hear, tell you about the story, the healing that happened to me that doctors just cannot explain. I'd heard of healings in the Bible, but I never imagined that one would happen to me. I mean, I'm just like the most average, unspecial person ever. And I also want to point out that this story is not about me. It's about Jesus and how he still performs healings and miracles in today's world, just like he does at each of these meetings when people get prayed over, and then they send their testimonies to the website with Brother Bob about how they also get healed. Well, just as I was starting to heal after about a year of what I call my adventures with breast cancer, well, things then I thought were going good, and then wham, like out of the blue, things took a sudden turn for the worse. I got this hideous affliction that it's called lymphedema. Don't feel bad if you don't know what I'm talking about, because I didn't know either. And then they showed me these pictures, and I'm like, what? That is what happened to me. I did not get as bad as stage 4, but I was up to stage 3. One day, I just bumped my arm kind of hard, and it just started swelling up. I did not know what was going on. I went to my doctor, and that's when I heard this word for the first time ever, lymphedema. What? Lymph is for all the lymph nodes that they took away out of my arm during my cancer surgery, and edema is simply the medical term for swelling. Oh my gosh. So then they have to wrap my arm in 7 layers of bandages and compression garments. And you need to keep your compressions on for about 20 out of 24 hours. And if some women don't do the compression, their arm can get so big, like in that last slide. So the mental picture of that level of swelling, some women, their arm can't even fit in a blouse anymore. And I mean, in extreme cases, women have their arm amputated. I had these visions of those old National Geographic magazines with the pictures of that disease called elephantitis. I don't know if they even have National Geographic magazine from the 60s anymore, but I must confess to you, dear brothers and sisters, I did not receive this news of this diagnosis very well. it felt like just as I was making progress and healing from all that went with the cancer, this cruel twist of fate, it felt like it just threw me right back to square one. I even tried to find humor in this, but it just wasn't happening. I started to fall into the poor me syndrome. Then I pleaded with God that it's just not fair after enduring my year of cancer and being, in my opinion, a pretty good sport about going through all the chemo, losing my hair, and then just all of that went with that. And so with the chemo, God bless anybody if you're going through that, because I understand it's just horrible. I don't know that you just sit there and they just put a needle in your arm and you just receive bag after bag of these concoctions that are supposed to, they do help heal it, I guess, but they make you feel really sick and nauseated. And I don't know if you ever threw up so hard, the next day you woke up thinking, hey, I think I feel like I have firmer abs. Well, I just thought all this, then it feels like you're facing death. And with all the wisdom of the saints, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to seek out some information from comedians too. So I just heard with Woody Allen, I'm not afraid to die, but I just don't want to be there when it happens. What I didn't realize is that bad news on top of bad news situation was actually a part of a plan that God was setting up, where if I just hung in there with faith, and again, here we go again with surrender. It's the topic tonight, and it applies here. Surrender to God's will. And I did that, and then something amazing was beyond words was about to happen. But at the time when you're surrendering, you're in that fog that you're like, you don't like what's going on. So all my attempts to fight against the reality that, okay, now I have lymphedema on top of everything else, that I decided to surrender and accept it. It's a cross I had to carry. And I asked Jesus, please help me bear it with grace. And he did. So then I felt like I'm just riding this wave, and this is you. You can also be riding the wave of God's grace as he guides you through the turbulence that's just all around you. That is my time when this trial was about to turn into triumph. And it started with a Cursillo. It's a 3-day little seminar that helps you grow in your Catholic faith. I also didn't know what's a Cursillo. I'm learning all kinds of stuff on this journey with cancer. Well, at the Cursillo, we went to Mass, and this mysterious nun, all dressed in white, came up to me after Mass to tell me she had a message for me. This sounds like a movie, but it really happened. She said, the Blessed Mother has given me a message for you, that you will be healed, but it will be by your faith that you are healed. And I was thinking, am I on candid camera? Am I being pranked? Is this a joke? But it was for real. So this nun said, her name is Sister Maria, and during Mass, she had a clear message that came into her heart from the Blessed Mother. And the nun looked all around the chapel where all of us were. And the message came to her, her eyes fell on me with my big, fat, swollen arm. And she said, a voice said, this message is for her, that woman with the hurt, swollen arm. Can you imagine? I said, I'm going to believe that message. I believe it. And I claim that healing. And I had faith that it would happen. Now, the message never said when it would happen. Well, I went back to the Bible and I read about other healings where Tobit was blind for 8 years before God healed him. Think about the level of faith involved there. Not to mention the lame man at the pool. It took 30 years for him to be healed. Well, for me, all told, it took 16 months before the healing happened. So for about a year and a half, I stayed in faith. I truly never once doubted it that I would be healed. And then one day I was in my kitchen looking out the window randomly, just at some birds splashing in a bird bath in our backyard. I was in my kitchen in my bare feet in front of a sink full of dirty dishes. Let's just say it was not the setting where you would imagine a miracle would take place. But God uses the most ordinary people and ordinary places to perform his extraordinary works. Out of nowhere, I heard a clear voice say to me, "You are healed." And I looked around and I asked out loud, "Who was that?" And I thought, did I really hear that? You know how you hear a car backfire and then you wonder, did I really hear that? Was it a gun? Was it a backfire? But I really heard it. And when I looked down, my arm was completely healed. I'm telling you, every bit of swelling was gone. Hallelujah. Praise God. I mean it. I laughed. I cried. I dropped to my knees to thank God. And I thanked Jesus and the Blessed Mother and the Holy Spirit and my guardian angel. It was like an Academy Award speech, thanking everyone in heaven because I didn't know who that voice was. And it was just the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me. No one else was at home. So I jumped for the phone and I called Sister Maria. She gave me her phone number and I told her, and she was ecstatic. And she said the day that it happened, September 23rd, was an added blessing to her because that day was the nun's birthday. God is amazing. I remember that nun said, "It will be by your faith that you are healed." And the next slide in Mark, "Daughter, your faith has saved you." And he told her also, "Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." And that's exactly how it happened. I showed my healed arm later to my doctors, and each of them, my oncologist, my surgeon, and my radiation oncology doctor, each of them were the head of the departments in their respective parts in the hospital. And I met with them separately, just, for the follow-up visits that you go to. And they each said, this cannot have happened. It's not medically explainable. And each of them used the word miracle. And I later learned that they were all Christians. And then my new oncologist when at a later follow-up visit, said, after he was reviewing my notes, he just said, "Frankly, I'm surprised you're still alive. You weren't supposed to make it past year 1, let alone to the 5-year mark." And so all the doctors had said lymphedema cannot be cured. And on the next slide, I said, with God, all things are possible. So before I close, I have one last scripture in John 11 that this in church one day, this hit me so strong. This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that Jesus may be glorified through it. My illness did not result in the death that the doctors had predicted for me. The curing of my illness was for the glory of God. That's why I'm here right now to tell it to you. And I tell anyone who will listen about this, it's Jesus may be glorified. He is the divine healer. Jesus wants to do this for you and for all of his children. So when you're facing trials, even the kind that appear to have no hope for a positive outcome, have faith. When the ocean with it's just once the turbulence is over, the calm will return. God was with us all the time. And I love this quote here from Luke chapter 1. God is with you. He'll be with you the whole time. Prayer is the bridge between the panic and the peace. God's grace can turn your trials into triumph. And I just thank you and may God bless you. I think there might be one or two more slides after this. Oh, that one. So Sister Vicky gave me an even better quote here from this. Oh, there it is. She put it on the top. I love it. So we were just looking through pictures, deciding, what will we put in this PowerPoint. And she's like, Erin, the crown of thorns became your crown of glory. And I'm like, all right. I just love that. So I just did make my battle cry be, even though you think, oh my gosh, can I possibly make it through this? You just say, Jesus, I trust in you. And that, just in case anybody wanted any more details, there, believe it or not, there's more to the story. And this book is on Amazon. And I do not do it for the money. I do it for the message. Oh, that's all. So.
Amen.